Hey, we're live. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we're going to be talking about a show that I think deserves a little bit more attention. I don't know how it's seen in most of fandom, but it is Star Trek Lower Decks. It's the new animated series. It's on, I believe, Paramount Plus. I bought it on Blu-ray. I actually did see it before when it was streaming, and I generally like it. And so I was turning Myron and Jason here onto the series, and I wanted to know their opinions of it.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I'm generally glad you did, John, because like those first couple episodes really, it's like did a good job like giving the show its own specific identity. Because I mean, yeah, it's animated, and yes, it's definitely skewed towards comedy, but it also still feels very much like of a piece with Trek in general, in the sense that where if you think of like next gen, it's like Deep Space Nine and Voyager are all like the series where we get to see Star Trek at it, like Starfleet at its best. With characters like overcoming their differences. It's like like working over to overcome their bad habits in order to be like better than they are. It's like, well, this Lower Decks is all about the rank and files, like the run of the mill like Starship crews who just can't do that. The ones who are petty, vindictive, and like I'm terminally sarcastic.
Yep.
So yeah, it's
Yep.
like it's like I mean, it gives us like a different perspective on Trek. It's like even while being its own, like even while coming from a different medium entirely.
Yep. And the characters that are in it are pretty funny. I have to say, they have their own charm and everything else. We have Mariner, we have Boimler, of course Mariner. So it basically focuses on these ensigns that work in the very bottom lower decks of of the of this particular ship. These ships, by the way, the class that they're in the California. It's called the California class. So this California class, so this one is called the Cerritos, the USS Cerritos, and they run into other ships like the Rubido. They run into some of these other ships,
The
like the
Merced.
Skirts, the Merced. Yeah, and there's some more that are coming up as well. Not to give any spoilers out, but yeah, generally, and it's produced. Well, actually, one of the guys who's in charge of Rick and Morty, so it kind of lends to the look of it, is actually also working on the show. So that's kind of cool. But it is not a Rick and Morty clone. I'm just going to say that right off the top.
No, it definitely isn't. I mean, it's like you could say that yeah, does draw some stylistic and tonal cues from it, but it's definitely owes more to Star Trek than it does more to Rick and Morty.
Yep. And I kind of like it. I like that it's just a nice, funny, and lots of little references here and there, and everything else. So yeah, Myron, what's your general opinion of the series?
Oh, you've actually made a fan out of me of this series, and you know that I'm not as well versed into the Star Trek lore as you and Jason or even some of our other friends are. But I am familiar with various parts of the series. You know, specifically like I grew up watching Next Generation. I'm an '80s kid, so that was like hot at that time, and I knew of obviously the original series and Deep Space Nine and everything else after that. But
Mm-hmm.
like you said, McMahon being coming from that Rick and Morty stylistic of animation and comedy, like it just only seemed natural that I'd be kind of drawn to this type of series. Like I love the adult raunchy humor, like cartoon humor of like Rick and Morty, Seth MacFarlane's American Dad and Family Guy, those type of series. And this actually, I can tell from not necessarily being as well versed in the Star Trek lore that this series actually pays faithful homage to the source material. We hear things like Jean Luc Picard Day, and we hear uh, protocols and policies named after legacy characters, like implement the Sulu protocols or things like that. And so I love how that this series its own entity, like it's its own contained series for a specific audience. But I think anyone could enjoy this series, non Star Trek fan or even original Star Trek fans. I think it has something great to offer to everybody. And so since you've introduced us to this series, like I was impressed by the first two episodes to where I ended up, buying the Blu-ray season for myself. I mean, it's a good deal. It's like $30 on Amazon. And so I took a shot in the dark. I like to watch different animations. I like to collect different animations, like series and movies. And so this is something I really wanted to have in my collection, and something I think I can continually go back to and enjoy. So I'm really digging the characters. I love the dynamic that we have these four misfits working in the lower decks, and as we've progressed through the episode so far, we can see, we tend to see like Boimler and Mariner kind of like go and do their own adventures, while Tendi and Rutherford are off doing their own adventures. So, when the show opens up, they're all together in the lower decks, like whether they're in their bunks or in a common area, just kind of goofing, laughing, joking, setting the stage for what the episode's going to be about. But then as the episodes progress, like, they split off into their own kind of contained, storyline, and we kind of see their relationships build as the series progresses. And so, especially with Tendi and Rutherford, I mean, that's just, more or less an obvious, like, nudge that these two are, are falling for each other and eventually going to fall in love with each other. But with Boimler and Mariner, to me, that at first it started off as that kind of buddy kind of relationship, like that Rick and Morty type of relationship, where Mariner's more of like the overbearing personality, like Rick, and Boimler's more of that submissive personality, like Morty. But from the episodes we saw today, like, I'm starting to get that vibe and starting to get that feel that Mariner cares more for Boimler than what she's willing to admit to. And so I'm really interested to see where not only their relationship is going to lead to, but just, the series in general, like where's it going to go, and how are these characters going to grow from what we're introduced to how badass they're going to be within Starfleet.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I like Boimler and it's like and Mariner's relationship. They've got, like, I mean, it's kind of hard to get that kind of odd couple dynamic just right, but I think they do a good job, like with her, like, Wild and Crazy Rule Breaker and his by the book like feistiness. But I think they've done a good job, like, showing you how these mentalities complement each other. It's like, and also how they can also go off the rails, like the episode. Like the episode about Cupid's errant arrow, where Boimler actually gets a real genuine girlfriend, and it's like, and Mariner is like absolutely convinced that, oh man, it's like she's got to be some kind of like she's a robot, she's a Cardassian spy, she's a Romulan spy, like she's a parasite, that kind of thing. And that kind of thing is cool because it's like this is how often has that happened in Star Trek itself, like when someone like who is like introduced, like who's like wins everyone over, and it turns out, oh wait, this is actually a spy for some alien race.
Yeah,
it's like
they're not what they seem.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about like the first couple of episodes, especially like the premiere, Second Contact. I mean, yeah, it's like they're talking about, oh, it's Second Contact, but it's like it's not more the prestigious First Contact, but it also establishes Second Contact as its own like thing, own social thing that needs to be followed up on. How it can like reveal like issues that that the First Contact doesn't, like how what everyone winds up turning into, most of the crew winds up turning into like ravenous zombie creatures, and they've got to figure out a way to deal with this. Same goes for the second episode, where it's like where Boimler ends up having to escort it's like a Klingon dignitary, and things go all kinds of crazy. It's like
Yeah.
I like those like spins on like familiar like Trek stories. My only real issues like have been in like the last batch episodes we saw, because like there's like a lot, there are a lot of familiar tropes in there that just kind of like, man, really? It's like we're doing this. Like I'm having Mariner's mom, like who's actually the captain of the ship, like giving her like, oh, I'm going to give her all the worst jobs. It's like so she'll quit. It's like okay, I see where you're going there. It's like, and then it's like, oh. Oh, and then when Boimler starts getting all jealous of his girlfriend's like, buff 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 coworker, he's like, oh, I gotta do something to impress her. It's like, yeah, we know where this is going. And
Yeah, I mean those are all familiar tropes that we've ingested throughout our lifetime through many different and endured through many different comedies, many different series, and it's like you can kind of I mean, at this point we can kind of predict where like things are gonna go, but at the same time, like like it could be done decently, and it could be done very very boring and very very poorly. But I we were introduced in this series, Mariner and her mother, the captain. We're introduced early on in the series how kind of abrasive their relationship is. But I think at this point we still don't necessarily like know the core root of why their relationship is so strained. But even going through this familiar trope of her mother giving her a promotion in order to give her job she doesn't like to force her to quit. Like, I understand like your daughter's a pain in your ass, but why are you going through this lengths to set her up for failure when you should be nurturing her and setting her up for success? Like, that's still questions that I still have, and I feel we're eventually going to find out. But I mean, from this episode, even though there's some familiarity of like this type of storyline, it was kind of nice to see like them interact the way that they did, to just kind of show the not only the abrasiveness of their relationship, but then also the mutual respect that they have for one another as they kind of like came out at the end. And so like I do think, I mean, what mother and what daughter aren't going to love each other, but and what mother and daughter aren't going to bump heads, but at the same time I do like what happened in this particular episode, where like Mariner's leader, to me, what I got from it, Mariner's leadership skills or ingenuity kind of like really showed in this episode. Like, I'm not even sure her mother realizes how much experience she's actually had. I mean, we've seen and heard in episodes 1 and 2 like a lot of the things that she's gone through, and I'm not sure if her mother really truly knows that, or still sees her as that like troubled daughter from like Starfleet Academy or something like that. So that episode made me curious, even more so, like wanting to know like how this relationship got as strained as it has.
Yeah. Well, there was one thing that was kind of a clue to that, and when they're talking, as they're chipping through rocks and stuff like that, and she's like, "You always treat me like a child," and it's kind of
Yes.
like there's that whole dynamic where and it's a familiar one, but it's nonetheless it's true in a lot of cases where parents tend to treat their children, even adult children, like they're still children. And that's kind of a reality, right? So
Right.
and we see that in here. It's like, hey, are you capable of doing things yourself? Of course you are. You're a grown adult. Not only is she capable of doing the things, she is quite good at doing things. She actually kind of she's got the connection, she's had the experience and stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of interesting.
her rock was sharper.
Yeah, her rock was sharper, exactly. In this episode where they talked about like the parasite and stuff like that, she's overreacting, protecting her friend Boimler because she's seen something like this before, and she's completely convinced, even to the level of conspiracy theory, that that there is definitely something wrong with the hot blonde going after Boimler. But then
She even made up her own like serial killer board to figure it out.
exactly. There is a underlying text there, and I think that's the one that Myron was talking about before. So I'd like to see that as well.
Yeah, because I mean, and I totally get that too. It's like, Boimler. Let's face it, he's a square, and like, and in Meritor's mindset, I totally get her disbelief, like, on why this. What she was? What was her name? Was it Rebecca?
It was
Barb?
Barb. It was Barb. And
Barb.
and it's like, why would Barb, a lieutenant, fall in love with a guy like Boimler, who is, an ensign, lower deck, clumsy, all these kind of like beta male personality traits. Why would she fall in love with him? And her first concept is that she's not real. She's a hologram. She's
computer end program.
Yeah, she's a parasite, things like that. And it's like she's just a total disbelief. However, throughout her paranoid investigation, there were these little subtle hints that I got of like maybe jealousy or maybe like hopes that they could get together at some point. Because I mean, maybe I can't really say like Mariner is falling in love with Boimler, but at the same time, like they've gone through a lot together in these past, like how many we watched, 6 episodes so far.
Yep.
They've gone through so much within these past 6 episodes that there's bound to be this kind of like heartfelt, like type of love, whether it's romantic or just platonic love. There's something there that they need to work out, but there's something there developing. And I don't know if like she was doing this more so out of like sorting through her feelings, or if she was just in genuine disbelief. But I just feel like as she sat with Barb while he was passed out and they shared like goofy stories about him, like it just felt more like stories of endearment rather than just like ragging on him and totally ridiculing him. So I'm curious to see like where this is going to go, because like, let's face it, opposites can attract, and it's like she's that kind of brash, do things without thinking, where he's by the book and to the letter of the T, and these personalities could balance each other out. And so like who knows where this is going to go. Whereas Tendi and Rutherford, they seem to be more like they have more things in common and share more things in common, to where like they have that type of dynamic in love, like, oh, we love the same things, like I love you for that. And we share common knowledge and common passions. So we see these two dynamic type of like couples or friends, always splitting off together. Even though all 4 of them are friends, we always see these two splitting off on adventures on their own within each episode.
Yeah, I think if you go on the Tendi Rutherford kind of thing, Rutherford in that episode, he creates that program.
Badgie.
Essentially, if you remember your Microsoft history, there was a little office thing.
You mean Clippy?
Yeah, called Clippy.
Oh, the little bastard.
Of Clippy. Yeah, that's basically a parody of Clippy. Can I help you? And then it just kind of glitches and then goes crazy. And at the end of the holodeck simulation, Rutherford essentially turns around and like defends him and defends Tendi. I'm sorry, defends Tendi. I mean, even getting stabbed in the shoulder by Badgie. So it's kind of like
I'm gonna wear your skin.
Yeah, psycho, like he's gone psycho. This program has gone psycho, and he's like, no, I have to protect her. I like her. Is she cute? She is, and da da da. So there's something there as well. It's just kind
Mm-hmm.
of like and it's it's maybe not like direct, but it's there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of like. I'm interested to see that. Like he was willing to defend her with his life, which at the very least could be like, hey, these guys are really good friends, or there might be something else under the undertext, lying
Mm-hmm.
underneath there, the subtext of it all. So
You guys may be right, but I for one hope that it's simply platonic. I mean, like I think that Tendi and Rutherford they make a cute couple, but Boimler and Mariner, it's like, man, it's like, I don't know, it's like just seeing them hook up would just kind of like, I feel just like they have a really good dynamic right here, and just having them get together would just kind of like feel just like complicated to a degree that would probably make it unfun.
And you know what? I can agree with you on that because it would just seem like a little bit too cliche. As we're talking this out, like, yeah, I mean, as we talked earlier about like familiar tropes, like this is a trope that you just don't want to like see, like, oh, okay, I saw that coming. But at the end of the day, though, things that I saw in these past couple episodes we watched today, like, I don't know, like, to me, I just, from watching so much television and a lot of these comedy series throughout the years, like, it's just something that I'm like, oh, okay, like, this is a possibility. Like, I think this is something that could lead down this road. But to me, I like their dynamic being essentially like Rick and Morty, Stewie and Brian. It's just that's what they got working for them, for me. So I mean, I find this series I find it funny. I do find it funny. Me personally, I do like the raunch of, like, South Park and Rick and Morty, and even like American Dad, which is starting to get a little bit more raunchier ever since it went over to TBS. But I do like that kind of like crude adult humor, and like this is a little bit more tame compared to what I'm normally like used to. But
Except for the bit about the clean up the holodecks.
Yeah, I mean, but even that wasn't crude to me. But at the same time, it was funny because it was like, oh, I know what that means. People getting sick coming
that
back.
was a funny scene though, where where the commander talks to the captain in her ready room about it. It's just like, they really do that in the holodeck? Like, they don't even tell you. They just kind of like infer it. But yeah,
I liked it when he was cussing. He cussed her out on the bridge when I'm like, they pick up the bleep in the bleep, and it's like, yeah, that's a perfect like little bit of censorship right there, because it just leaves it to your imagination just what was being censored right there.
Yeah,
because so many things, many bodily fluids.
It's crude for Star Trek. It's just the right amount of crude for Star Trek.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
so. It's funny. Well, the other thing that I liked about it is like, and then the part of the conversation where he's like, that's like most what people do on the holodeck. I was like, hey, you just took it to the next level, man. Like, but yeah, you had to expect that. Oh man. Anyway,
so even though I'm not done with season 1, I looked up earlier that season 2 is supposed to premiere in August of this year. And nice. So, which is a good sign, because that means, like, the show is successful and is coming back for a second season. And I mean, John, I know, and even Jason, I know you guys are a little bit more versed in Star Trek than I am, and are more Star Trek fans. But I know, like, I guess with the new Star Trek projects that have been brought about within the past within the last 10 years, like, they've been kind of lukewarm, you know what I mean? Like the movie reboots, like, some people like them. I know a lot of people that hate them, especially the second one. these new shows that have premiered on CBS All Access now, Paramount Plus, like seem to be lukewarm with a lot of Star Trek fans that I know. So, I think this show, at least from talking to you guys, like this show seems to be like that right temperature that hits on something new, something different, but still pertains to um, still pertains closely to its source material.
Yeah, and I like to say two things. First of all, like I have rewatched this season probably about 3 times because it's an easy watch. I can like just throw it on. But I've noticed like I was like, oh hey, there's a Star Trek reference I didn't get on the first viewing. And which kind of tells me right off the top that since it's kind of entertaining to me on my first watch and I'm not getting those, that it has to be entertaining to people. In other words, you don't need to know a lot of the Star Trek trivia or like a lot of the like Easter eggs that are in it. You can just
Hmm.
enjoy the show for what it is, and that's a plus. Now, I mean, Myron, not an you're a mild Star Trek fan. I'm probably a more of a Star Trek fan, and Jason the same.
I'm in the middle.
Yeah,
Hmm.
right there. And but you were still entertained by it regardless, correct?
Yep. Definitely like it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of what it's like wide appeal. That's kind of a good thing for a show. You know,
Hmm.
they can
Yeah.
cater to the fans and can cater to those that are just kind of like, oh yeah, I know Star Trek.
And see, I'm gonna say something really controversial right now, and it's I'm always more I've always been more science fantasy, leaning more towards Star Wars than I ever have did Star Trek. But I was entertained by Star Trek: The Next Generation. Like, at that time, like, going back, I guess in the '80s and the '90s, like looking at like the original Star Trek series, like, I'm kind of like taken aback or just kind of like I guess disgusted by the effects at that time. I mean, I'm sure most kids today are disgusted by the effects of movies we grew up with. I mean, it's just a generational thing. But for me, like Star Trek: The Next Generation was modernized and had cool effects that were like relevant in the 80s, that, oh wow, it looks better and it's so cool and it doesn't look like a plastic model flying through the television. So I was a little bit more interested and cued into that series than I was any other Star Trek proper, like any Star Trek project before that. And so, like, I do know some of the references or lore or even Easter eggs pertaining to like Next Generation and even Deep Space Nine. And so, like, I have a little bit of insight, but like you said, I like not being as well versed. I'm entertained by this series as a standalone, and whether I get all the references or not, like, like I still find it entertaining. And there's times where I'll watch it and I'm like, oh, look at that little Geordie LaForge bear, or they reference like Commander Riker, or they might even reference an episode like I remember from the original, or from the Next Generation series or something. And so, like, I feel like this series offers like a fun uh a fun spin on the Star Trek storyline continuation, but it has enough for everybody to enjoy. Like, it's a good way to segue in and enjoy it. And I think a lot of people who are not original fans of something get intimidated by jumping in because they always feel like they got to start from the beginning or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, do I have to watch all the MCU movies in order to enjoy Avengers? And it's like, well, you can jump into any Avengers movie and be entertained and love it, but if you want to get the background or story on things, yeah, it's suggested to go back and watch it, but you don't necessarily have to. And I think the same thing with Star Trek. It's like, yeah, like that's a lot of like episodes to ingest, but you don't necessarily have to jump into like this series or this series to enjoy Lower Decks. Like, hopefully, if you like Lower Decks, that might make you want to go back and try to, like, research or even look into older series, and maybe that'll be your segue into uh, getting into Star Trek as a whole. But it's well enough on its own to where, like, you don't have to watch everything in order to absorb the story and enjoy it.
Yeah. Like, I'll give you one of the obscure ones. Before they go on that Klingon mission. No, is it on the Klingon mission? Anyway, Mariner's kind of asleep at the before they launch the shuttlecraft, and she's sitting there and she's saying, and she says these words, kind of like mumbling them in her sleep. She
Mm-hmm.
says,
Mhm.
marooned for all eternity in the center of a dead planet, buried alive, and then she's woken up by Boimler. She's like, "Oh, hey, I was just having this awesome dream." And essentially, those words were the words spoken by Khan in the first movie
Mm.
after he marooned Kirk in the center of that in the center of that moon. And then that's the when the famous, after Khan says those words in Star Trek 2, like that's where you see, the meme, Khan, where
Yep.
he's
Mm-hmm.
like yelling into the microphone or whatever, then the communicator. That's where
Mm-hmm.
that meme comes from. But it's kind of funny because she's like, "Oh yeah, I was having this awesome dream." I'm like, "Oh, is that awesome?" But anyway, yeah. So like little things like that, it's kind of a cool little like nod to the fan. But even if you didn't get it, there's still a lot there. And yeah, you might want to watch it, and I'm sure someone out there on the internet's going to create some kind of like reference guide, like
Mm-hmm.
Easter egg guide, and then you can go back and like watch all of the references that they have in there. I'm sure that'll be a thing. I'm not willing to write such a guide though. Um,
That's a lot of work. That's a side job in itself.
Mhm.
Someone will do it because someone always does that shit on
Well,
the
it's almost been
internet.
a year, so maybe someone already has.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well,
Yeah,
not
I
only
don't
that.
know. I haven't looked, but if I do, I'll be like, okay. Well, there are Star Trek databases, databases like wikis online, and I'm sure that they mention all that stuff. So, but I particularly like the fact that these ships that are not the primary ships in the Starfleet, these are the California class, and so each, like we talked about before, yeah, we'll see more of those as we go on through the episodes.
Do they even have the
Mhm.
Rubidoux?
They do, and it's coming up. I'll say that's just spoiler. So, um, but yeah, wait, I think the one. Oh, what the one we just saw? There was it was the Merced. That was the one we just saw. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So yeah. But yeah, lots of cool little references. And then if you don't, hey, you'll enjoy the ride anyway. That's what I think. That's my 10 cents on it.
Yeah. Aside from my reservations about how the show can like occasionally rely on tropes a bit too much, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this so far because like I mean like, I knew that it existed and that people didn't think it was that bad, but I didn't really get like that kind of like level of critical consensus or word of mouth that made me go, oh, I got to check this out on my own. But so yeah, I'm glad you're showing this to me, John. It's like it's like because like compared to like some of like what I've heard about some of the other Trek series, it's like this one seems to be like pretty solid.
Yeah.
And see the other problem to your statement too, Jason, on why, like, you probably wouldn't have checked it out. It's just another service to subscribe to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying like everybody coming out with their own service is a bad thing. It's just that we're from the generation where we come from cable. That one payment for all the channels we want to watch, and I personally enjoy streaming, but Paramount Plus, like, what other things do they have to offer to make me want to jump on this? And at the time, like, yeah, Lower Decks was an interesting concept, and the fact that they have Viacom Nickelodeon content. But I'm just grateful that they're still releasing these series on physical media to where, like, okay, like, I'm willing to buy it, and I'm talking like Netflix, CBS or Paramount Plus, um, Disney Plus, like all these services like have great shows and great properties to offer. I just hope they, still continue to offer alternative ways to view it, whether it be through, releasing it on Blu-ray or whatnot, to allow us to just kind of like ingest the specific content that we want. And so, like, yeah, I'm glad, John, you introduced us to this series, because then, like, for the cost of admission for this Blu-ray, it was at a decent price to where, like, I like what I saw so far, to where I was willing to make the jump and own it for myself, and have it in my collection. And so this is something that, okay, maybe in the future, like, if there's some other content on the platform it's offered on, like, maybe I'll subscribe. But for now, I think Lower Decks is, at least for me, like a winning property on that Paramount Plus platform.
Yep. While I don't subscribe to Paramount Plus or the CBS All Access, I did buy the Blu-ray Steelbook because I really enjoyed the show, and I was like, you know what, I want this in my collection. So
Yep.
like I can just watch on demand. So
Yeah, and I
yeah,
got the steel book too, and it's a nice little set.
yeah, it is. It's really cool. Love the characters. You've got the Lower Decks people, and then you got the command crew, and essentially that's who you're dealing with. Um, but there's some things that we'll talk about after we're done watching the entire series. Maybe we'll revisit it at the end and give an update to the whole series, at least the first season. Just after we're done, kind of perusing those episodes. So,
And one more thing is, like, I want to know more about Mariner's father, who seems to be an admiral.
oh yeah, he's
Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
yep.
so he's an admiral, and obviously, like, Mariner's been, a problem child, to where, like, she served under her father's command at one point. Now she's serving with her mother. So I hope they dig deeper into that too. Like, I want to know more about her father, and, like, like, his role as a Starfleet admiral, and what type of shenanigans she got into during her time serving under him. Because there was that one flashback, I think it was from the last episode, where she had that cute little afro, and
Hmm.
where she was talking about her experiences with shapeshifters and parasites and stuff.
Oh yeah,
And
like right before, like that guy's
Yeah,
boyfriend, well, the
that
girl's boyfriend ate her friend.
yeah
yeah, and it seemed like
that.
like a
By the
like
way,
a retro flashback.
yeah, that was like she was on another ship, and then they were also on Deep Space Nine, which that's
Is
the
that
space.
what that was?
Yeah, that was Deep Space Nine.
Because
So
their outfits look very familiar. That gray and red color scheme.
yeah, so
I didn't catch that.
that gray and red color scheme is the outfits that they used in the last Star Trek movies, like Next Generation movies, I should say.
Okay.
So that's what it is. And so, yeah, she was kind of had the afro going on in that flashback, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of cool. I liked it. It was neat. I think the guy, I was like, hey, that's a cool character design. But
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, she was wearing that. So clearly, she had that. But yeah, maybe we'll get some definition on that in the future.
Hmm.
Anyway, but yeah, so I did like that. I like that reference. And actually, there's another subtle reference in that shot. Um, there was a medical ship docked in that on Deep Space Nine just before they switched to that scene where they're in the bar, which I only have to assume is Quark's. Um,
Mm.
there's the only bar that they have really on that space station. Regardless, the ship that they have they showed was not a ship that it was kind of canon, but it was future canon. So I don't know if that'll make it canon. Oh, and by the way, in that last episode, they made reference to their friend who got transferred and then fired off of the USS Titan.
Mm-hmm.
The Titan
Yep.
is Will Riker's ship.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like so he gets that command. If I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong, but I believe in the last Star Trek the Next Generation movie, which was called Nemesis, which has Tom
Mhm.
Hardy in it, by the way. Tom Hardy, you know who he is.
Bane.
He's Bane. That's right.
Yep.
Bane.
Amongst other things. Yeah,
Venom.
definitely Bane. Was he Venom?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. No. Bane for sure. And then Venom. Okay, yeah, he's
Yeah,
also
he's Bane. He's
right.
also Mad Max as well.
That's right. And he's Mad
Mhm.
Max, everything else. Yeah. He was, yeah, and he seems to be in a lot of those, oh, what's his name? Christopher Nolan movies. Anyway, but yeah, where was I going with that one? So
I'm
reference.
sorry, Riker reference.
Riker reference. Yeah. So I think at the end of that movie, Nemesis, they mentioned that that he's going to be taking command of the Titan. So, and I know there were some novels written about it, but yeah, so we know that that's at least a thing here that they're making reference to in this episode. So, pretty cool stuff anyway. Like I said, just stuff there. Um stuff to watch for, I should say.
Mhm.
Anyway, so but yeah, we had I do love the cast. I think that they've done a really good job. I think that it's a lot of fun to watch these episodes, and I can't wait to watch more of them, frankly.
Yeah, looking forward to it on my end as well.
Yep.
Definitely.
All right. Hey, we'll catch you next time. We're going to sign out. Sage is signing out. Talk to
Good
you next
evening,
time.
kiddies.
Later.
See ya.